animals are dying out faster than new animals are being born. So literally, the population is in a decline, and it's going to go down to zero if we continue along the same path. And a lot of species are already on a functional extinction path because they're not able to meet each other. They're not able to have babies as fast as they're dying out, especially when we go around burning forests to create more grazing land for our animals, for our farmed animals. So this is why I say, it's important that we restore forests back, we restore land back to wild animals so that we can reverse this functional extinction that has already started for a lot of species.
Thank you. And will you please tell us about the one thing that we can do as we focus as a humanity together?
Yeah, literally, we are playing a game. Okay, and in that game, we are now focused so much on growth. So this is like the caterpillar's game. So we are playing the caterpillar's game. And in the caterpillar's game, we are focused so much on growth that to promote growth, we have literally monetized everything, right? So we monetized everything so that when a dead tree has more economic value than a live tree, we cut down the tree. When a dead animal has more economic value than a live animal, we kill the animal. And when a sick human being has more economic value than a live human being, a healthy human being, we sicken people. So we are literally, we are playing this game mindlessly. And in the process, we have created climate change. Climate change is like a reaction of the planet to our game. And we have caused biological annihilation. We are killing animals, wild animals, because that's the game we are playing. That's the rules we have set for the games. And we are also, causing pandemics through these animals. We are causing all kinds of chemical pollution to kill the wild animals. So all this is because of the game of growth that we are playing. Okay, so we have endangered life on Earth. And then finally, we have addicted people into consuming compulsively, into compulsive behaviors. And our corporations are constantly trying to addict us. They actually hire psychologists to figure out how to addict us into their products, right? And then we lie to ourselves. We lie to ourselves about protein, about calcium, necessity of eating animal foods. So we are literally, making people eat bad foods so that they get sick, so that we can make money off of them, right? And simultaneously, there are some people who don't even have enough food to eat. So we are playing this game by telling lies to people. Otherwise, people wouldn't do this, right? And then finally, we are stealing from the poor to enrich the rich. So literally, when you go buy a pound of rice, organic rice at the supermarket, and you pay $2 for that, and I went to the village in Orissa where the rice was grown in India, and I asked the woman, how much did you get paid for that rice that you grew? And it turned out to be 5 cents a pound. That's what she got. So what happened to the rest of the money? Well, it was pocketed by corporations, by the traders, because this game was set in place by colonial traders. So it was designed to extract wealth from the colonies for the traders, right? So we are still playing the same old game that was started like a few hundred years ago. We didn't decide this game. We just inherited this game. So what is the one thing we can do? And, I tell people going vegan is the most important step that you can take. Why? Because it's about giving up your privilege as a human. That's what we do when we go vegan. We're saying, no, animals have a right to live too. Animals are just other earthlings. So when we take that attitude, we no longer are able to exploit other animals. And then we no longer have the mindset to exploit other human beings as well, because humans are also animals, right? So we then stop playing the game according to the old rules of the game. Then we go vegan. And that disrupts the system. See, because ultimately, we are corporations are so powerful, we need to make them do things that we want. Otherwise, they have the power to destroy the planet, and they are blindly going around destroying the planet because that's the rule of the game. Those are the games that we have. That's the rules that we have set for the game that they're playing. We have told them to just grow their revenues, to grow their profits, right? So we have to now, as people, take back that power through our consumption patterns. So when we go vegan, basically we are telling corporations, I'm not going to buy anything that you make with animal products. So corporations are then forced to provide us with plant-based options. So it's not because, Burger King did not have the Impossible Burger because, they wanted to promote veganism. No, they knew that if they didn't have Impossible Burgers, they're going to go bankrupt. So we discovered that we have the power. By just changing our consumption patterns, we have the power to take back and make corporations do what we want, as opposed to following whatever they're telling us. So that's why I say that the most important thing we can do is to overcome our addictions to animal products and to go vegan. And how do you overcome addictions? Well, as a community, we can do this faster and better than as individuals.
Thank you, Dr. Rao.
Right.
And I see that it really takes grassroots activism because, like you said, this isn't coming from the top down. It needs to come from the ground up because we are not hearing this in the mainstream media. Right. And we're not hearing it really in the educational system. And right. So it really requires this grassroots activism. So I want to thank you and Ellie and everyone for doing this. And I know everyone's doing their small part all over the world. Yes, and so what are some of your experiences worldwide? Because I know you are very active worldwide, especially in India, of how many people in many communities are making the change to become vegan and help promote veganism for sustainability.
Yeah, this is a global movement, right? Veganism is a global movement. And as you said, it's not coming from the top down. No one wants to talk about it, right? I mean, even Al Gore doesn't talk about it. Greta Thunberg doesn't want to talk about it. I mean, everyone who is active in the environmental arena are not talking about it. They are framing it as, we need to eliminate fossil fuels, and they'll say, eat less meat. Okay. Now, that is a recipe for apathy because no one can eliminate their fossil fuel use right away. We're all stuck in this fossil fuel economy, right? And everyone already thinks they're eating less meat than someone else. So everyone says, oh, I'm already doing my part, so I'm just stick with what I'm doing. So this promotes apathy. The framing that they're using is to promote apathy. Whereas when we frame it as go vegan first, and then reduce your fossil fuel use, and we'll reduce the fossil fuel use over time, then that is a framing that gives us the power, right? And they don't want us to have the power, okay? They don't want us to realize that we have the power all along to change the system. So I use the example of Paul Chatlin, who's from Chicago. In 2013, he had severe chest pains. He couldn't even walk 10 steps without getting excruciating chest pains. And then he went to his cardiologist, and the cardiologist pointed out that he has, one of his arteries is 100% blocked, and two of his arteries were 65% blocked. And then this cardiologist happened to be a student of Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn. And he told him, okay, you have two choices. Either you can get a triple bypass heart surgery, or you can go vegan. And he decided to go vegan. Okay? So he decided to go to Dr. Esselstyn's class. He took a 1-month course. He spent $975. And Dr. Esselstyn taught him how to eat properly. And he did that and he recovered completely. Okay? I mean, his arteries got unblocked, and he he's running marathons and all kinds of things now. So he recovered completely. Then he tried to get Blue Cross Blue Shield to reimburse him for the cooking class he took because it cost him $975. And they refused. He took it all the way to headquarters of Blue Cross Blue Shield. And he said, how absurd is it that you're willing to pay $125,000 for a triple bypass heart surgery, but you're not willing to pay $975 for cooking classes? And they said there is no code for it. There is no code for the cure. There is a code for the bypass surgery, but there's no code for the cure. So what is happening to us on the planet is a macro version of what happened to Paul Chatlin. See, climate change, so just like Caldwell Esselstyn points out that heart disease is just food poisoning. It's really food poisoning. You're not eating the right foods. That's why you're getting heart disease. So Dr. McDougall also says that, he says all these chronic diseases are literally symptoms of food poisoning. And when we start eating the right foods, the food poisoning will go away. Instead, what do we do in our system? We insist that people eat the same food, and then we give them pharmaceuticals and we make money off of them, right? That's the system we are stuck in. So overall, climate change and this biological inhalation and chemical pollution and all this, these are all symptoms of food poisoning, a planetary scale food poisoning. We're not eating the right foods to begin with. You're not relating to the planet correctly. Okay? We're relating to the planet as if we are the dominant species and we can do what we want and we can use our power to kill all these animals because we are the predators. I mean, all these stories that we tell ourselves that are not true. We are just another species on this planet. Okay? And all the other species are just as much earthlings as we are. So that's what the vegan movement does, right? Vegan movement changes the story of our relationship with other species from a dominating and oppressive relationship to a very compassionate partnership-based relationship, right? So when we do that, there is no code for it in the current system. So this is why Al Gore and Bill McKibben and all, they don't want to talk about veganism because they're in the old system. So both sides in the old system, there's one side that's saying, what heart disease? There is no heart disease, right? So you keep walking, even though you're getting excruciating chest pain, keep walking. So they're saying, they're pretending there is no disease. There's one side. The other side is saying, we all need to get triple bypass heart surgery. There are very few people who are saying there is a cure for it. That we need to change our relationship with nature. And then we can literally, start running marathons like Paul Chatlin was doing. As a species, collectively, we could all be running marathons. So we could all be living in a thriving planet. I mean, this picture that I show behind me used to be a coffee plantation, 20 years ago. And now it is a beautiful forest. How did that happen? Well, we tore down the fences and gave it back to the animals, and they did everything. They brought back the forest. So the planet is ready to heal as soon as we change our relationship with the planet. Just like Paul Chatlin's body was ready to heal as soon as he changed his relationship with food.
Thank you, Dr. Rao. And I know that part of your grassroots activism is the Vegan World 2026. And I remember your conference that you had in Costa Rica with a team of the activists. And can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so Vegan World 2026 is a project that started because of my granddaughter. I knew that wild animals were dying out. In fact, the first statistic that I read from the World Wildlife Fund was in 2014. And that said that 52% of wild animals had died between 1970 and 2010. So I did an extrapolation at that point and said, if we keep killing animals at the same rate, how many more years do we have before we wipe them out? And I came up with 2026 as the number. And I was shocked. I said, why isn't everybody working on this if this is true? And then I realized that they were modeling it differently. So they were modeling human beings and our relationship with nature as if we are tigers. And nature is like a deer, right? So tiger deer population, there is a model for that. They were using that model to predict how human beings are going to relate to nature. So in that model, the way it works is, as the deer population dies out, the tiger population dies out. And then the deer population comes back up because there's not enough tigers to eat them. Then the tiger population comes back up. So the two kind of go up and down like that, right? And that's how they were modeling human relationship with nature. So they were expecting, we'll keep doing what we're doing to nature and then we'll die off, right? This is their plan. This is the plan. This is their model. That we will die off and then nature will come back and then we'll come back again and then nature will die out. So this is a continued relationship as a predator with nature. We are a predator of nature. That was the model. And I wrote to the scientist who was doing the modeling and I said, are you sure that this model is correct? I mean, human beings, we don't just die out like tigers do. We use technology to find the last remaining pieces of nature and we kill it. So we are on track to wipe out everything in nature and then we'll die out, of course. Then there'll be a huge collapse and we'll die out. And he said, oh my God, I didn't think about that. Okay, so I knew at that point that the modelers hadn't thought about all the aspects of their model. So that's when I said, oh my God, this is serious. We need to be looking at this more seriously. And then the next World Wildlife Fund Living Planet report came out in 2016. And it said that between 1970 and 2012, we wiped out 58% of wild vertebrates. So from 52, it went to 58 in just 2 years. So we are losing 3% a year. So if we just keep doing that, by 2026, it's going to get to 100%. So I mean, that report came out in 2016, I think September or October. And I was reading my granddaughter a story in bed. And at the end of the story, she asked me, Grandpa, who were the first human beings? And I have promised her that I will never, ever lie to her. Because I realized that by lying to our children, we are turning them all into these consumers, right? So I promised her when she was like 2, 3 years old, I promised her, I'll never, ever lie to you. And so she knows that. And she has used that to figure out that there is no Santa Claus, that there is no Easter Bunny, there is no, that there is no tooth fairy. Then she knows all that because she'll come and ask me. So this time when she asked me this question, I had to tell her the truth. So I said, okay, I'm going to explain to you how this works. So imagine that you're standing on the street and you're holding your mama by your hand. And you ask your mama to bring her mother to stand by her side and so on. So you create a long line of mothers on this side of the street. And on the other side of the street, you ask a chimpanzee to do the same thing with her mother and her grandmother and so on. By the time these two lines go from Phoenix to Tucson, they would merge. Because both lines are going to say, hey, that's my mother too. Immediately she sat up in bed and she said, what? Are you telling me that animals are my family? And I said, yeah, now that you put it that way, they are your family. Because honestly, I hadn't put it that way. I only knew the theory of evolution, in my mind. So she put it, immediately she connected it and she said, they're my family? And I said, yeah, they are your family. Then she said, then why are people eating my family? Grandpa, make them stop. And because she has been raised a vegan and she sees all the people around her eating animals. And she always thought, oh, they can do that because that's the way they are brought up. But now she realized that they're eating her family. So she started bawling. She said, she started naming names of people she knows who are eating her family and telling me, make them stop, make them stop. And she was 5 years old at that time. And I told her, Kimaya, I'm trying. This is what I do every day. I told her it's my job to make them stop. And she said, what? This is your job? This is your job. You know you haven't done your job. So when will you do your job? And I blurted out, I better do it by 2026, otherwise we are all in big trouble. And she said, will you promise me that? I said, okay, I'll promise you that. She said, will you give me a pinky promise? I said, okay, I'll give you a pinky promise. So we did this pinky promise. And then she said, you can never, ever break a pinky promise. And then she went to sleep. And I couldn't sleep. I was thinking, what did I promise my granddaughter? You know, who am I to make this promise? And now I realized, I mean, I had to do this. You know, I'm serious. This is a serious promise that I just made. And but then I finally dozed off. And in the morning, I woke up realizing that civilization is an engineering project. Okay, culture. You know, culture is how we specify what we want to build. Civilization is how we built it. So culture is like the specifications for a project that we are trying to do, and civilization is the actual implementation of it. And this is what engineers do. We are implementers. You know, we implement what you want. So I realized that as a systems engineer, I am actually in the right position, I mean, the right background to figure out how to implement what we set out to do. So what did we set out to do? We set out by saying that all men are created equal, which we have slowly expanded to mean all humans are created equal. And now we are expanding it even further to mean all beings are created equal by our creator. Okay, that's the vegan movement. And then we said, our creator has given us an inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. How have we implemented that? We all have a right to life. And then we tell people, you have to earn a living. We train our children so that they can go earn a living. Well, what does earning a living mean? It means that you really don't have a right to life. You can live only if you serve the master. That's what it means. Whoever has money is your master. Okay? So it is a colonial system that we have implemented. We pretended to do, you know, that everyone has a right to life, that the creator has given it to us. And then we said, no, 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 the colonial master has the right to your life. Right? So that's the meaning of earning a living. And then we said liberty. And I claim that we are all being factory farmed. We are not free. None of us are really free. Very few people are free, okay, in that sense. Why? Because either we have debt, which means we have to work to pay back that debt, or we have money with which we have lent to others, and we are trying to protect that money. See, to us, you know, to me, privilege is also a prison that we are in. So we have created a game in which everybody is imprisoned. That's not liberty. I mean, I was in Ghana, you know, where people are generally poor. They have very little to, you know, so, but they have small houses. And so we could go, I was staying with one of them. And then there are these rich people. There are a few people who have big, big houses in the middle of these shanties. And I realized that the person who's living in this big, big house, he's so scared of the people outside of him, outside his compound. So he's got these huge compound walls, and he's got all these, you know, barbed wire on top of the compound walls, and he's got a sentry, right? He's got a soldier protecting his property. And inside, he's isolated. He's drinking alcohol all the time. So he has privilege, he has wealth, but he's really in prison. So we have imprisoned each other, okay, in this game that we are playing. So much for liberty. And what about the pursuit of happiness? Are we all pursuing happiness? We have been convinced that pursuit of happiness is really the pursuit of pleasure. Okay. So the more choices you have, the happier you will be. Actually, it's not true. This is not true at all. We all know that happiness comes from within. Happiness comes from serving others. See, I tell the story of the wishing tree. It is one of the fundamental stories of our culture in India. And in the wishing tree story, which is the equivalent of the knowledge tree story in the Bible, by the way. And it helped me understand the knowledge tree story in the Bible. Because ultimately, all religions are trying to teach us the same thing, the same lessons. Okay. About how do we live in a way that is compatible with the planet, with each other and the planet. So in that sense, how do we play the infinite game? Because the game of growth is a finite game, right? The game that we are playing now is a very finite game. There's only so much you can grow, beyond which you have to stop growing. So sustainability is about changing that game to an infinite game where we can keep playing forever this game. So that's what religions are trying to teach us too. How do you play an infinite game? So in the story of the wishing tree, and I think it's through stories that we actually change ourselves, through that we determine how we react to each other, how we play the game, etc. Right, through stories. So in this wishing tree story, the story begins with children playing with sticks and stones and rag dolls on the floor of their hut in the middle of the forest. And their uncle comes to visit them. And the uncle says, "Hey, why are you playing with sticks and stones when the wishing tree is right outside your hut? Go out under the tree and wish for anything you want, and then you can be playing with real toys instead of these trifles." The children don't believe him. How can there be a tree like this? So they wait until the uncle leaves, and then they rush to the tree and they start wishing. They wish for sweets and they get them. And they gorge on the sweets and they get stomachache. They wish for toys and they get them. And they play with the toys and they get bored. Then they wish for fancier toys, and that leads to greater boredom. So there was something about this tree that they did not understand. It grants you what you wish for, and along with it comes the exact opposite. Because that's how the universe is built, of dualities. Nothing comes separate by itself. The children didn't know that. All they knew is that they couldn't stop wishing under the tree, and the more they wished, the more miserable they were. Then they get to be young men and women. And now they're wishing for what young men and women wish for. The four main fruits of the tree were sex, fame, money, and power. And with each comes its opposite, and the result was more misery and suffering for the young men and women. Then they get to be old men and women. And they congregate under the tree in three different groups. The first group says, we were so happy when we didn't know about this tree. So this has all been a hoax and a farce. And the story says they were fools, for they hadn't understood the tree. The second group says, we must have been wishing for all the wrong things. If we could go back and wish for different things, I'm sure we would have been a lot happier. And the story says they were bigger fools, for they understood less than nothing about this tree. And the third group was the most foolish of the lot, where they come under the tree and they say, we are so miserable, we wish we were dead. And the tree grants them the wish. And they're immediately reborn underneath the same tree, because the tree always grants wishes in dualities. So meanwhile, a lame child was watching all this from inside the window of the hut. He also wanted to go out and wish for a good leg so he could walk. But there was such a crowd of people under the tree that they pushed him away and he couldn't get through. So he stood there and he watched, and he saw how the tree was making everybody miserable. The people who were wishing were miserable. The people who were trying to get to the tree were miserable. All the animals were suffering because of all the wishing. And then he had a brilliant flash of insight. He understood the cosmic swindle that was being performed under the tree. And he began to feel a well of compassion come from within him for all the suffering under the tree. and he lost the desire to wish. He was perfectly happy with his leg as it was. And so he became detached from the tree. And with that combination of compassion and detachment, he was the happiest of the lot. So that's where the story ends, right? Now, when I read that story, I had to figure out, what is this brilliant cosmic swindle? What is this understanding of the tree? So I started researching more. And then I found out that in one of the Upanishads, which is like a commentary on the Vedas, they tell you that this wishing child and the watching child are inside each one of us. That's our duality. And the purpose of meditation is to get in touch with your watching child and to observe your own wishing child. Okay, that's the purpose of meditation, in fact. So it makes it seem like if you really want to be happy, you need to step away from the universe and observe, as opposed to be active in the universe. So that's the question that comes up in the Bhagavad Gita. So in the Bhagavad Gita, which is a dialogue between man and God, which is part of the Mahabharata epic. And so man goes to God there and he says, why should I wish under this tree? Why are you making me do this? Why am I fighting this battle of life? You are God, so you take care of all the problems, right? You can do it. And God says, how do you think I do it? Through you. So you should go and wish under the tree. And then he taught him how to wish. And this is, to me, the most important lesson that we all need to understand about this tree. So he taught him that if you go under the tree and you wish for the benefit of everyone else, and you say, I don't want anything from this tree for myself, then you will be perfectly happy wishing under the tree, and everyone will be happy because of your wishing. So a selfless person who goes and wishes for the benefit of others is just smarter than the selfish person who's going and wishing for himself or herself, right? He just has figured out that by wishing for others, you're happier than by wishing for yourself. Because the selfish person is going there thinking, they also want happiness. Everyone is looking for happiness, right? So the selfish person just hasn't figured out that being selfless is better than being selfish. And all of us are stuck in this selfish game we are playing. Okay? Because the rules of the game are set up. So unless you're selfish, you're not going to win in this game. Unless you're greedy, you're not going to win in this game. That's the game we are set up, right? So we're playing a very selfish, greedy game. And we are going out under the tree and we are wishing for our own species. We are saying every other species has to give to us. Right? So as a species, we should be wishing for the benefit of every other species. That's the purpose of the tree. So if we use our technology and everything that we have come up with for the benefit of the ecosystem, for the benefit of all other species, we will be perfectly happy wishing under this tree, and all the other species will be happy because of our wishing. That is the vegan movement. That is the vegan movement, okay? It's vegans have woken up and said, when we give up our human privilege, actually we are happier. So the one common thing I've asked, among all vegans is that I wish I had done it sooner, because everyone knows that they're happier after they went vegan. And that's because we are wishing for other species now, right?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Rao. Thank you for that beautiful story of the wishing tree. And that story reminds me of your beautiful comment that we are transitioning out of a worldwide culture of normalized violence into the new normalized nonviolence, the vegan world. Can you tell us more about that, please?
Yeah, so, we are stuck in this prison, right? So we have all been imprisoned. We are in this factory farm. And anytime you assert privilege on anything, it is an act of violence. So we are living in a system of normalized violence, not just violence towards animals, but violence towards each other, violence in the form of wars, because that's the game we are playing. The game is a game of violence because it's a game of scarcity. So induced scarcity. Because in the current game, if you have an abundance of something, it's worth nothing. That's the game you're playing, right? If there's an abundance of fresh water, everywhere you look, there's fresh water. Who can sell you bottled water? Why would you even buy bottled water? Because you can just step out and pick it up from the stream that's outside, right? Or your tap is filled with fresh water. Why would you go buy bottled water? So they have to make fresh water scarce in order to sell you bottled water. That's the game we are playing, a game of artificial scarcities, right? And that is normalized violence. Okay, this is normalizing violence. So we started out with abundance and we're turning it into scarcity through violence. So like even food, right? So we are extracting 6 times as much food as we need from the planet. But most of it we are feeding to our animals. So we extract 9 billion tons of food from the planet every year, and 7.3 billion tons is fed to our animals. And our animals are giving us 0.19 billion tons of food. So we only eat 1.5 billion tons of food. So the animal food is only 15% of the food we eat. Okay. So most 85% is already plant-based. But for that 15% of the food, we are giving them, the animals, 7.3 billion tons of food. So this is how we create an artificial scarcity out of a natural abundance. Because we had 6 times as much food as we need to begin with, right? So now we fight over the animal foods. We tell everybody, you have to eat meat, otherwise you're not going to get protein, right? So we lie to people. We lie to people and make them fight over the animal protein, the animal food. And that's how we make money. We can make money in the current game. If suddenly everybody realizes that you really don't need to eat animals to have protein, and vegans have figured that out. In fact, vegans are, on average, vegans take 70% more food protein than the US recommendation in America, USDA recommendation. So vegans are getting 70% more protein than we really need. Meat eaters are getting like triple the amount of protein they really need, right? But 97% of Americans are not eating enough fiber. So there is malnutrition in America, widespread malnutrition in America, and the USDA knows it because that number, 97%, came from the USDA studies. They know that 97% of Americans are not getting enough fiber. 98% of Americans are not getting enough potassium. 68% of Americans are not getting enough magnesium. There is widespread malnourishment in America, the richest country in the world. And the USDA knows it and they're doing nothing about it. Why? Because they prefer it this way. Because then you'll get sick. When you'll get sick, then you'll go pop pills. They make money off of those pills. This is exactly like what they do with Paul Chatelain, right? They don't want to cure you. They want to keep you sick because they are factory farming for this game. That's the game we are in. So it's about freeing ourselves from that game, seeing through that game and freeing ourselves from that game, and then working on a new game in which selflessness is normal. Selflessness is rewarded, not selfishness. In which generosity is rewarded, not greed. Okay? So that when people play the game, they automatically become selfless and generous because that's how they win in the game. So if you set up a game in which you'll win only if you're selfish and greedy, and then you go around saying, oh my God, he's selfish and greedy, well, what do you expect? Right? The winners in the game are selfish and greedy. Well, that's the game you have set up.
Thank you, Dr. Rao. And this is so important to hear, and we're very grateful to be able to share this information. And what do you suggest on how we can share this out into the wider community? Because these are not the messages that we are hearing from the mainstream, and you've described why we aren't hearing them. But what more can we do personally to help?
Yeah, it has to be a grassroots movement to educate people, to tell that story. So I have come up with 7 strategic actions we need to take to get to a vegan world by 2026. Okay, there are 7 strategic actions we need to take. Number 1 is education, education, education. Education in the form of documentaries, in form of storytelling. So we tell the story of the caterpillar turning to the butterfly, tell the story of the old game and why it is rotten and why we need to change the game. So we need to tell all these stories. And we need to tell the story that we are in the caterpillar phase. That's why we were playing that game. Okay. And in the process, we actually did something good too. We actually heated the planet up, right? So that the planet does not ever have to go back to another ice age again. So we did something good when we were playing that old game of selfishness. So now we are being woken up and said, if you can't continue to play that game. So we have to tell the story that we are now transforming from the caterpillar to the butterfly. And actually COVID-19 has put us in the chrysalis phase of the caterpillar. COVID-19 has basically said, no more growth, no more traveling. I don't want to see you running around, taking flights unnecessarily. Saying, stay home, and then letting the wild animals come back, right? So this is Mother Nature is taken charge of us and told us that you now have to become butterflies. So you have to tell that story. That's number 1, education, education, education. Second is the UN and the 195 nations that have signed the UN Sustainable Development Goals, they're all trying to get to a sustainable civilization. But they're trying to do it through bypass surgeries. Okay, through bypass surgeries. And so there is one in the Sustainable Development Goals, goal number 8 is like the Trojan horse they put in place to maintain this bypass surgery system, the system of the caterpillar. And goal number 8 is economic growth. So all the nations who have signed the Sustainable Development Goals are pretending that they can meet all these goals by just growing the economy, which is not true. First of all. Secondly, if I meet all the other goals like zero hunger, no poverty, gender equality, and all these other goals that they have, which are nice goals, if I meet all these other goals, why do I care that the economy is growing? That's just a number, right? Who cares if the number is growing if I have no poverty? So that goal should be taken out because it is being used to disorient us. And replace that goal number 8 with goal number 18, which is Claire Smith's goal of zero animal exploitation. So that makes all the other goals easy to meet. So we are petitioning the UN to drop goal number 8 and add goal number 18. The third strategic action is food healers, saying that in Food Healers Initiative, we want to have healthy, immune-boosting vegan food freely available to every human being on the planet. So we need to start doing that from the grassroots as the vegan community, cooking food for healthy, immune-boosting food, meaning whole food plant-based meals, right? So it's like putting everyone on a 21-day program to overcome our diabetes and our malnourishment. All of us are malnourished. Right? So we need to make this available to everyone. So that's the Food Healers Initiative. And fourth is we need to get together to create a constitution for a system of normal nonviolence. How will we govern ourselves in a system of normal nonviolence? So there's a constitutional convention that I'm calling for. Fifth is we need to create an open source economy based on cooperatives. Because right now, corporations don't have to tell you what they're doing to create a product. They don't have to tell you they don't have to disclose their processes because those are all trade secrets. So by having all these trade secrets, they're actually pouring all these pollution into the environment that we don't even know what they're pouring into the environment. So how can we tell whether we are sustainable or not if we don't know what pollution we have put into the environment? It's impossible. So you have to have an open source, service-oriented economy as opposed to a profit-driven economy. So we need to work on that. That's the fifth one. Sixth one is a vegan spirituality initiative. I mean, basically getting all the religions to come together and say, we are all talking about compassion for all creation. We are all talking the same language. And so there are lots of initiatives now coming forth to do that, but that we need to promote that. And finally, we need to bring back the original forests. So as we give back land to nature by eating vegan foods, as the vegan movement grows, we need to be bringing back the original forests. So there has to be a new ecology initiative. So those I've identified as the 7 things that we need to be working on as part of the vegan movement. And I'm inviting everyone to join that, and go vegan in the process. But ultimately, we need to do this from that relationship with nature, as a relationship of partnership as opposed to domination.
Thank you, Dr. Rao. So I'd like to review those 7. One is the education, the UN policy, eliminate number 8 of the economic growth and include 18 to end the exploitation of animals, the food healers,
Right.
regenerate the forest, vegan spirituality with all the religions. What were the other 2?
Constitution Convention.
Yes.
And the new ecology. You already said that, and the new economy.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. And how can our listeners and viewers learn more about climate healers and get involved for those who would like to?
Yeah, if you go to climatehealers.org, you can sign up to join us. So you can join the newsletter, or you can join the Vegan World 2026 project, where we are meeting on a regular basis. So we meet once every quarter as a convergence to talk about our actions and what we are doing with our actions. And we also meet weekly on each of these actions. So we have groups of people who are working on each of these actions. We have people working in lots of places. I mean, we have people working in South Africa, in Texas, and in Washington State, and in Arizona on the Food Healers Initiative. Right?
Thank you.
So we need to create this movement of people, action among people that to get us to the new game. Because the new game, it's about not only getting corporations to change, but we also have to change, right? And we need to change the rules of the game. So we need to figure out the new game also as we go along.
Thank you. And here in Massachusetts, Shirley McAfee with the Evolve Cultural Center is creating that with change, with vegan food and music and inspirational talk and spiritual practitioners coming together. And so that's really powerful. I'm really grateful. And I know that you have done that a lot in Phoenix. And I remember hearing about Zen Nights. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, Zen Nights is a block party that happens on the last Friday of every month. And during COVID-19, they stopped it, but now they're back again, so they are still doing that because we are doing social distancing in the block party, and a block party where people can come and experience what vegan food tastes like, what vegan clothing is, what vegan, shoes are like, vegan cosmetics. So it's basically, how do you live a vegan life? And so there are vendors who display all these things. And there are also activists who have set up tents to talk about what they do. So it's normalizing veganism. That's what the block party does.
Thank you. And also too, with the spirituality, is there another group that's also involved directly with spirituality?
Yeah, there is Lisa Levinson and Judy Carmen. They were the founders of the Interfaith Vegan Coalition. And so they are, so we are sort of, hosting them on our as an incubator. So we're hosting them. So we're giving them resources that they can use in our community because we support their work very much. So we think it's a very important work to get the religions to promote veganism. And by the way, there is this Wednesday, the Abrahamic faiths are having a webinar on veganism. So this 25th of November. So, and it's actually initiated by the Open Muslim, hold on a second, let me tell you the actual name. The Open Mosque Interfaith Webinar, it's called.
Beautiful, thank you. I see that as holistic to bring everything together with the spirituality and the health and then also the environment. And can you recap and tell us more about functional extinction and what that means?
Oh, I'm going to just jump in for 1 second. Can you hear me, everybody? Can you hear me, Marlene?
Yes.
And
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm watching the time, so I know we'll probably have to wrap up, but this is so exciting. I think it's been such an amazing, I'll let you close, Sailesh, with talking about functional extinction, but we're going to have to make arrangements to do a follow-up because this was really, I mean, it was amazing. It was just so much, so full. And so I know there's probably going to be people that will want to do a Q&A. So I think what I'm going to do is maybe set up something through my website where people can submit questions, and then we'll set up a follow-up event. And if that's okay with you, and we can, we'll find a date and we'll cover the next ground. It's been great. I'm just watching the time, so I don't want to lose people before we get kicked off of Zoom.
Absolutely, I'm at your service.
So yeah, so
At your
if you can
service.
close with thank you both so much. And talking, and the other, I did want to comment, you know, when you talk about being selfless and generous, is that nature is very generous. Nature is selfless and generous. It would be more like nature, you know, like you talked. But yeah, if we close with talking a little bit about functional extinction, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I'm going to talk. I'm going to tell you about what I observed with the elephants of India. You know, the Indian elephant. I was in this sanctuary. This sanctuary that's behind me now. It's a Zoom background, by the way. So it's not, I'm not really there. But I took this picture, and I was observing this elephant breaking branches off trees, eating the leaf and throwing the branch away. Okay, so she kept doing that. So I asked Pamela, "Hey, isn't that elephant being destructive to your sanctuary?" And she said, "No. Wherever the elephant broke branches of trees, that's where the sunlight streams and nourishes the underbrush. Wherever the elephant trampled on bushes, that's where new pathways are formed in the forest. Wherever the elephant went and dropped huge mounds of poop, that's where new jackfruit trees are born. Because her poop contains jackfruit seeds, all kinds of seeds, and along with it is the manure for a new tree to be born. So everything in nature belongs exactly as it is. And what I want to assure people is that we are no exception. Human beings also belong exactly as we are. And because we belong exactly as we are going to transform to a compassionate caretaker species. Because that's the only way we are going to get to an infinite game of sustainability. We're all looking for sustainability now. And I'm telling you, sustainability can only happen in a world where human beings are kind and compassionate. It's not going to happen in a world where human beings are routinely a predator species. Okay? Because we are on track to wipe out all the animals when we do that. But in nature, just like in nature, the elephant stops cutting branches of trees at some point. She stops. Who tells the elephant to stop? Well, nature did. Something told the elephant to stop, just like nature is telling us to stop. Sending these pandemics our way, saying, wake up, stop. And we are stopping, right? We are responding to the pandemic. You can't just keep saying, oh, I'm going to ignore it. Because if you ignore it, you're going to die. Right? So nature is in charge. Nature has always been in charge. Nature is in charge today as well. So have faith that even though the numbers are showing that we are on track to wipe out all the animals by 2026, it's not going to happen. We are going to change. We are going to transform because we are part of nature.
Oh, amazing. Oh,
And we
thank you.
know how to transform.
Oh, thank you
Right?
so much.
I mean,
Oh my goodness.
it's basically a food poisoning. We know how to do it.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much. Oh, that was a beautiful way to close. That's really a powerful message. And I'm going to end with that. Unless Marlene, would you like to say closing words to take us out?
Yes, I'd like to thank everyone for your participation and your presence and your compassion as we work together to create change and manifest the paradigm of normalized nonviolence. And an extra special thank you to Dr. Sailesh Rao in Phoenix, Arizona.
Yeah. Woo, that's right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Marlene. Thank you, Sailesh. Thank you, Donald.
Thank you.